They padlocked my gate and parked their SUV across my driveway like they were planting a flag, like they were claiming territory. Over what a bogus fine from an HOA I never even joined. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about rules or fences. This was a power move. And they picked the wrong guy. I've lived on my 5-acre patch since long before there were sidewalks, lawn signs, or nosy committees. Used to be a pecan orchard, old quiet land. Still is. I mind my business, take care of my goats, and keep to myself. The Whispering Cedars subdivision popped up years after I bought the place they built around me, boxed me in, then tried to act like I was part of their club. I wasn't. It started with a courier dropping a fat envelope on my porch, like it was radioactive. Inside, glossy photos of my livestock fence and a fine that nearly choked me. Said it was too tall. HOA guidelines cap fences at 4 feet. But I've got an agricultural exemption county allows 8. Mine's 6. Legal solid, and none of their business. I threw the packet into my woodpile, figured they'd move on. But they didn't. A few weeks later, I get a certified letter with county code citations and demands for payment plus interest. Real official looking. Signed by some inspector I'd never heard of. And then came the voicemail from the HOA president himself, Clayton Voss. You ever met someone who wears aviators indoors and calls himself a community leader? That's Voss. His message was all corporate legalese and smug threats. Said failure to remit constitutes consent to enforcement, whatever that meant. Then came Thursday. My cameras picked up a silver SUV creeping down my gravel road. 2 guys in blazers, hop-out padlock. My wrought iron gates shut both rings, then park the SUV right across the entrance, blocking my only driveway. They tuck the keys in their pockets, hop back in, and kill the engine. I ran down from my workshop phone, filming the whole thing. You can't do this, One of them just smirked and said, We're executing a restraint action to encourage voluntary compliance. I said this isn't even HOA land. They rolled up the windows, locked the doors, just sat there smug. That rain came fast. Cold, hard southern spring rain. I stood there, soaked phone in one hand, calling the sheriff with the other. Then I called Jasper, owns the local tow yard. Good man. I helped him rebuild his flatbed ramps last year in exchange for some welding. He knew about my orchard entrance, the second hidden drive nobody else used. 15 minutes later, Jasper rolls up in his wrecker, smooth as a surgeon. Hooked that SUV lifted the rear tires and hauled it off like it was a toy. That's when Voss and his clipboard sidekick showed back up, sputtering legal nonsense and waving forms. But the sheriff had just pulled in, asked if they had a court order. They didn't. Both were handed trespass notices and warned not to return. First, I thought, all right, that's that. Next afternoon, I get an email from some lawyer claiming to represent the HOA, demanding immediate release of the SUV and attaching a new invoice. This time they were billing me for storage fees. I replied with a copy of the sheriff's report, highlighting the section about ongoing trespassing investigation. The SUV was evidence. It wasn't going anywhere. Then the real twist hit. My cousin Ben, he's a lawyer, calls me up howling with laughter. He says, "You're not going to believe this. They sued you. And the tow yard. And the sheriff's department. Said they filed in county court using their own HOA ledgers to prove damages. But here's where they tripped. Those records showed the SUV wasn't even theirs. It was leased and co-signed by every dues-paying member in the subdivision. Meaning any mistake, everyone's on the hook. Ben digs deeper. Turns out the lease agreement had a clause. If the vehicle was used for unauthorized commercial purposes like blocking private property, the lease defaulted. I sent the repo department photos coordinates and the sheriff's report. Next day, the SUV vanished again, this time towed by the finance company. And that's when things unraveled fast. Clayton Voss called me 3 times in under an hour. Last voicemail sounded desperate. I ignored them all. 2 days later, I hear from another neighbor that the HOA's insurance had been canceled. The provider cited material misrepresentation of risk. Without that coverage, every HOA board member was now personally liable for ongoing legal trouble. So they called an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Sent me a subpoena. I showed up with muddy boots, clean jeans, and a binder thick enough to crush a raccoon. The place was packed, folding chairs. Whispers folks who'd lived with this HOA nonsense for years. Voss tried to guilt-trip me. First, said my stubbornness put the community at risk. I pulled up GIS maps showing my land had never been included in the subdivision covenants. Then I rolled drone footage of their ornamental HOA signs, sticking 6 inches into a legally protected wetland buffer. Dead silence. Then a hand went up. Mr. Gilmore, 70-something retired teacher. Polite voice never raised it. He asked Clayton, "Did our dues pay for that Cancun trip you posted in February?" Gasps. Then someone else said, "What about those monogrammed jackets?" Chaos. Pure, beautiful chaos. I slipped out while the crowd turned on them, but not before grabbing a USB stick from the laptop at the front table. Turns out it held HOA budget spreadsheets. The ones that broke the dam. 5 homeowners filed a class action suit that same week. The county fined the HOA $15,000 for the wetlands issue. The state attorney general opened a fraud probe, and then came the final blow. A retired judge lived 2 blocks over, found a dormant clause in the county's graywater conservation documents. If enough non-HOA landowners petitioned the county could revoke the subdivision stormwater exemption. Judge got the signatures. Petition passed. County engineers said the retrofit would cost $9,000 per household. But the HOA's reserves, gone. Between legal fees, fines, and SUV lease penalties, they had nothing left. Homeowners voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. That triggered a liquidation clause. Debts first hit the board members personally. Voss lost both his homes. Another board member filed for bankruptcy. Last I saw, trucks were hauling off the HOA signs. Just muddy rectangles, left where their crest used to sit in flower beds. My driveway. Gate wide open, 6 feet tall, perfectly legal. No more padlocks. So yeah, they tried to trap me. But in the end, they trapped themselves. Now, I'm curious. What would you have done? Did I go too far, or was this just standing your ground? Drop your take in the comments, especially if you've had your own run-in with an overreaching HOA. I read every one of them.